It's November 17th, and I'm going to be going over the books that I read in October. I know this is like very, very late. I've not been doing great, so medically, I've been having a lot of stuff going on, so this is why it's late. I have also been in kind of a reading slump because of everything, but I appreciate everybody's patience. I know you guys were very patiently and eagerly awaiting my return, so thank you for that, my precious little bunny boppers. Before I go into the books, I want to give a huge shout out to my wonderful friend Kaya Hayes. She just published her book that she's been working on for the past few years, The Dampire from Retail, and I'm so proud and happy for her. I'm super biased, obviously. I've also been like reading this book ever since she started working on it. I've been helping her edit it since the very beginning, so seeing it finally be published is so incredible, and I'll be putting a link in the description to where you can buy it on Amazon. So please go support my wonderful friend. She's a really talented author, and the book is really, really fun, and I'm hearing there might be a sequel, so get on it. But without further ado, I'm going to dive into the books. Number 1, we have Grand Union by Zadie Smith. Zadie Smith is an author that has been recommended to me a bunch, and this is the first book of hers that I read. It is, it's not super long, but it's a series of short stories all covering different themes. They're all pretty mundane, but they are also incredibly rich and poignant. I'm a really big fan of stories that are like very, like realistic fiction. I love hearing about, regular schmegular people, and because, I'm a regular schmegular person, and her writing style is just super engaging, turning, an everyday life and being able to see what's really going on, I think is really incredible. And it's also a reminder that even though we all live pretty mundane lives, we all got, shit going on under the surface. So it's really cool reading a bunch of short stories where that is really brought to the surface. I gave this one a 4 out of 5, and I'm pretty excited to read more of Mrs. Smith's books. Next is another pretty short book. It's called The Employees by Olga Raven. This is a banger. This is, as it implies, the title implies, it's about a bunch of employees who are the employees on a ship in space called the 6000 ship. And the story is basically told through a series of interview logs of the employees, and then the ultimate fate of those employees and the ship is revealed through those logs. Oh my god, this book is so incredible. I've never read a book written like this one before. Very creepy, has such a a super intense sense of dread throughout the whole thing, and just the way that you're getting these hints and tidbits of the story revealed to you is really, really special and unique. So captivating. Ending is devastating, and I don't want to spoil what happens, but it kind of hits out of nowhere, and it's like, oh my god. And it's one of those books where it's so short, where I actually reread it as soon as I finished it, because once you know the ending, it's one of those books where reading the whole thing through again really richens the experience. I gave this one a 5 out of 5. This is a really incredible book. I think it was shortlisted for the Booker Prize whenever it came out. I think maybe 2019. It's a really great book. I love it. I don't know if this author has written more, but if she has, I'm gonna be reading this shit out of those books. Next, we have a pretty funny book called Several People Are Typing by Calvin Kasulke. This is a story about a man who works for a tech company in New York, and somehow his consciousness gets uploaded and trapped in his company's Slack account, which is, if you don't know, just an app that companies use so employees can communicate with each other. And this book is pretty funny. It's also pretty existential, having your consciousness trapped and also being able to have the entire internet at your fingertips, or literally like being able to upload it into your conscious is pretty awful. It sounds terrible. But the story for me was a little all over the place. Some really strange things happen. Like one in particularly very strange thing happens in this book that really made me go, what? Like, huh? Okay. This is another book where it's written in a unique style because it's basically just Slack messages. There's not really any, long paragraphs of dialogue. Another thing about this book, it is painfully millennial. So fucking millennial. No offense to all my millennials watching, but it's like jokes. Millennial jokes, millennial references. Also, they type in emojis a lot, and like, I thought Gen Z was supposed to be like the chronically online ones, because like I could not decipher some of these like emoji like messages. I was like, what the, like, genuine, I have no fucking idea what these people are talking about. I gave this one a 3.8. It's pretty fun, pretty little, funky little book. I think most people would like it. And again, it's a very quick read, because even though it's like about 300 pages, it's just Slack messages, so you get through it pretty quickly. Next is Happiness Falls. This is a book that was published, I think, in July of this year. I know it came out this year, by Angie Kim. It's about a family whose father goes missing, and after taking a walk with their youngest child, who is also disabled, the child returns home and the dad does not, and they are really struggling to proceed without their father in their lives, which, totally makes sense. It was a pretty heartfelt story, but I kind of struggled to connect with the main character, and it's completely told from her perspective, if I remember correctly, and at times the writing was a little dry. It felt like the main character, I guess it's realistic in the sense that like the main character, she spoke a lot, but I never really felt like she was saying too much of substance. I don't know. I kind of just wanted more from this book, and I wasn't getting it. And I've read similar stories. This is also a story about a Korean family living in Virginia. Shout out Virginia. And so I've read similar stories about like the POC experience in America, and I just felt like this was missing a little something. I give it a 3.25 out of 5. I just might not be the correct audience for this. That's completely fine. It was not my favorite, but obviously this is not a bad book by any means. Also, I read 14 books, I forgot to say. I know, that's like an all-time low. Next, we have a really, really funky and interesting book called Case Study by Graham McCrae Burnett. This is a story about a woman who starts seeing a very infamous psychotherapist because she believes that he inadvertently killed her sister. I'm gonna spoil this one. This book has like no plot, basically. This whole thing about this woman seeing this psychologist because he killed her sister, it's brought up like once. It basically is never talked about. This character is completely pointless. This book is way more so about the psychotherapist. It's essentially like a biopic about him in book form. When I read this book, I had so many thoughts at the end. As somebody who works in the psych field, I thought this book was very entertaining. It points out a lot of hypocrisy and the insane amount of egos that you face in the psych field, especially this book. It's not set in modern times. It's set back, I want to say, the 70s or 80s. So also in a time where psychological theory was not new, but it was becoming, more to the forefront. This references a ton of real life case studies and also psychological theories, but the book itself is completely fiction. And I really liked it. But like I said, once I finished reading it, I was like, man, I don't know how to feel about this book. It's kind of weird. I feel like I've been tricked somehow. Like, obviously the blurb on the back says it's about this woman, and then you read the book and it's really not. And I did some digging and I read some interviews from the author, and he said that he set out to write a book that was not in any genre, and he wanted the audience to be able to come up with their own thoughts and basically be able to project what they wanted onto the book. And I think it definitely succeeds in that regard. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. It's a weird little book, and I think some people will really like it, like myself, and I think some people will probably think it's like boring drabble. But that kind of sums up the field of psychology anyway, so I recommend it. Check it out. Next, we have The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is a story about a butler who is kind of reminiscing on all the choices that he's made in his life while he's on vacation and taking a road trip to go and pursue a lost love interest. This was a very interesting character study. It is completely focused on this butler. It's all from his perspective, and it's him recounting his life from, young child to adulthood. And he's a very, very like stereotypical butler. Kind of lives for his master. Everything else is secondary. His father was also a butler, serving the same man, and so it's kind of interesting seeing this character realize all the mistakes that he has made throughout his life and how different his life could have been if he made different choices. None of these choices that he made are like life-threatening or dangerous. It's just like choices that have left him yearning for something more, which I think is a really cool and interesting perspective. Kazuo Ishiguro is also just a very, very talented, I feel like I don't have to say that, an incredible writer. This one, I think it was, I gave this a 3.75 out of 5. I think it was just because the material of the book isn't the most relatable. It's also very dry and written very, like esoterically, so it can be a little tedious to read at times, but still, writing is really great. And the character is pretty sympathetic, so I think most people will definitely enjoy this book. Kazuo Ishiguro, I would also recommend checking out any book of his. You are probably bound to like it. He's written like one of my favorite books, so yeah. Next, we have The Imposium by one of my favorite authors of all time, Miss Olga Tokarczuk. This is a story about a young man with tuberculosis, and so he goes to this health resort. I forget where it's located, but it specializes in people who have these long-term illnesses, and strange things start to happen. I really love this book. There are a lot of distinct and annoying fucking characters in this book, but they're great. It's like, it's like watching a fucking drama on TV where you're like, I hate these characters, but I can't stop watching them. That's what this book felt like. The main character was also very sympathetic and relatable, and the allegory for chronic illness and kind of the deeper things that are happening in this book, which I will not spoil because I think it's worth reading, was really unique and special to me as well. This is one of those books where it leaves a lot of crumbs for you to kind of pick up on, and if you don't pick up on them, the ending is going to be a little confusing, but if you are able to recognize it, I think it's a very rich reading experience. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. I love Olga Tokarczuk so much. I really hope she never stops writing books. Next, my friend Kai and I, we read The Phantom of the Opera together, the original by Gaston Leroux. This book is so fucking boring. It is terrible. It is bad. It is not good. It's awful. It sucks. It's terrible. You might be thinking, oh, but I love Phantom of the Opera. The show is so incredible. The movies are incredible. Because they're nothing like the book at all. This book sucks. You'd think that the Phantom of the Opera book, would be from this perspective of either the Phantom or Christine. Nope. It's from the perspective of some fucking guy who is like madly in love with Christine, and she don't want fucking nothing to do with him, and he is the most fucking annoying character. I don't know. Just watch the fucking movie instead. Boo. 1 out of 5. Terrible. Bad. Not good. Really fucking boring. Awful. Next. Sorry. Next, we have A Short Stay in Hell by Stephen L. Peck. This is a little horror movie. It is about a man who has suddenly died of cancer. He is a Mormon and he goes to hell. Ooh. And in this universe, Zoroastrianism is the true religion, and everybody who does not practice it goes to hell. That might sound weird. I promise this book is not about religion. It does not make fun of anybody's religion. It does not poke fun. This is purely a psychological horror story about the terrifyingness of endlessness. This is truly a dreadful book, horrifying. I keep thinking about it. The idea of being trapped in eternity is so frightening, and I will, you know what, I'll spoil it a little. So, hell in this story is not the typical brimstone and fire. They actually kind of poke fun at that a little bit in this book, which I thought was funny. Hell is very, categorized to the person. And in this case, this gentleman's hell is that he gets sent to an infinite library, and this library holds every possible book that could ever be written. So he could pull out a book that is all semicolons. He could pull out a book that is just like the word smile over and over again, and he has to find the book that contains his entire life story with no errors, no mistakes, and then once he finds it, he is able to leave, and I guess, I don't remember, be reincarnated. And, oh my god, this book is incredible. It's just such impressive creativity to me. I think if you're not a fan of horror, I still would recommend this book, because it's not horror in the sense, like, you're not going to get jump scared. You're not going to be, like, shaken in your bed at night thinking about, you know, what's coming after you. This is a truly psychological horror book, and the more you think about it, the worse you feel. But I definitely recommend it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. It's also a very short story. You can literally read this in probably, like, a half hour. It's really great. And I can't stop thinking about it. A Short Stay in Hell. 4.5 out of 5. Next, we have Notes of a Crocodile by Q Miaojin. This is a story about a girl named Lazi who is in love with someone unattainable, and this love that she feels for this person haunts her throughout her young adult lives. This is a queer story that perfectly encapsulates what it is like to be queer in a society where it is mostly frowned upon or pushed to the side, or where you're expected to act not queer in certain spaces in order to be safe, or also just to be considered normal. So much beauty and love for literature. This is a translated work. It was originally written in Taiwanese. It is just completely enthralling. The main character is so sympathetic. The characters in the story are all very sympathetic and all very distinct and different from one another. I just absolutely love this book. It's incredible. It's just so good. It's so beautiful. I feel like Taiwanese literature is just on a different level. Sadly, the author Q Miaojin, she died by suicide at the age of 26, shortly after publishing this book. So I just want to say, in that light, love you guys. And also, if you're gay, it's your job to keep on living. Especially in this time where so many people don't want you to do that. So you just gotta keep on doing it and read this book. Love you guys. All right. Next, we have another book called Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevenson. This is a story about a ghost who died in the 1400s, and she remains in the place that she lived and died, just looking over the place and kind of studying the people. It's like a resort, or like, I guess in modern times we would call it an Airbnb. This story takes place in the late 1800s, I want to say. And she just becomes enamored with all the different people who live there. And the famous musician Chopin starts staying there while he's recovering from an illness, and he's staying there with his lover and her 2 children. This is another story that has a lot of queer elements, and it totally got me out of, like, my reading slump. It is just it's a really, really unique book because you have the perspective of this ghost recounting her life in the 1400s and how it relates to these modern times and what she's witnessing now, and also just so much richness for life, despite the fact that the story is told from the perspective of a ghost, literally somebody who is dead. But it's just it's really delightful to read. Honestly, I really had such an enjoyment reading this book. I would definitely recommend it. It's a really special read. It's really introspective, and I think it really, really celebrates life in a beautiful way that I haven't seen in all, life in all of its horribleness and all of its beautifulness. And this is a really fantastic book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Next, we have Milk, Blood, and Heat by Dantiel W. Menees. This is a bunch of short stories all set in Florida. Go Florida. This is similar to Grand Union in that all the stories just kind of follow ordinary people, but the themes in this book are pretty dark, pretty taboo, and I think the author handles them with a lot of care and love, and their writing style is so good. I think I said this in a previous video where I feel like a lot of modern stories really lack a distinct writing style, and this is not the case with this book. This is very beautifully written. It feels also very, very intimate. You really, really, when you're tackling such dark themes, it really opens up vulnerabilities in yourself while you're reading them, and I think that really creates a deep sense of intimacy when you're reading these books, which is part of the reason why I love reading books so much. You get all these wonderful feelings, all these unique feelings just by reading, and I just think people who write are so incredible. Oh my god, I love reading, and I love writing, and I love authors. Very rich writing style. All the different stories felt very special. My favorite was the titular Milk, Blood, and Heat, which is the very first story, and I think it really sets a great tone. I gave this one a 4 out of 5. All right, we just got 2 more. I know this is going to be a short video. November's video is also going to be a little short, but I am excited to be, reading more again. Next, we have Kitchen by Banana Yoshimoto. This book is so good. This is a story. It's actually like 2 stories in one. But the first one is about a young woman who's and a young man who has both experienced grief in their life by losing family members who were parental figures. And then the latter story is about a woman who meets a girl in a very strange circumstance after the death of her boyfriend. Oh my god. This author understands grief in a way that is so poignant and incredible. And I imagine, and I just felt so seen while reading it, and I imagine a lot of people would feel very seen in their grief while reading it. She really, really understands how grief can be such a world-ending thing. I think when somebody hasn't experienced grief, they have this idea that, oh, you'll go back to work someday. It'll get easier every day. And they don't really understand that grief looks different for everybody, and also that grief is terrible. It's such a shitty, awful feeling, and it never goes away. And sure, it might get easier, but it really, some things never go away. And it's also okay that they never go away. I think people also expect you to get over that grief. And in this book, none of the characters are rushed to get over it. They're given time to breathe. They're given patience. They're given grace. And they also have grace with themselves, which I think is a really important thing. Banana Yoshimoto, incredible Japanese writer. This book is so... it's just beautiful. It really, really, really captured the themes of grief and love preserving from grief. I really, really enjoyed how grounded and realistic this was. Incredible book. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. And lastly, we have The Time of the Flies by Claudia Pinheiro. This is a story about a woman who has just got out of prison after serving a 15-year sentence for killing her husband's lover. And while working, she now has a company where she's a fumigator with another friend from prison. They seem to have changed their act. They're ready to be, citizens again. And one day a client has a proposition for her to help her poison somebody. This is a really stylish and cool mystery. It has very, very cool. It's just very, it's cool. I thought it was really cool. The chapters alternate between the two friends' perspectives, and they have incredibly different and unique perspectives. And reading their thoughts, super cool. I was like, you really, really, really feel like you are in the mind of these characters, and it really helps you understand where they're coming from. This also has a lot of feminist themes, which I think are very nuanced and unique, the way that they are approached in this book, and they're not the typical ones that you I feel like hear about in stories that might have more feminist themes. This is a very well thought out thriller. The ending was okay. I feel like it's so hard to pull off a good ending for a thriller. But as far as this one goes, I still thought it was really great. And I overall just really enjoyed reading it. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5 as well. And that does it for the month of October. Super late. Again, I'm sorry. But I will see you all next month. Goodbye. Bye.